Hello and welcome. What I have here is a split screen. On the left-hand side, I'm in my downloads folder, and I recently just downloaded three files: dividend spreadsheet, EPS spreadsheet, and price history. All three of these files pertain to different metrics related to Loblaw. Zehrs, like the publicly traded company, the grocer, the retail grocer. So the first file is a dividend related to Loblaws. The second is their quarterly earnings, and the third is their price history. And I just also opened up this blank Excel workbook. I haven't even saved it to my computer yet. It's just book one, so no work is saved. And I have a few instructions listed here. It says open a blank workbook and add the price history, dividend, and EPS workbook to the data model and create a connection only. So that means I want it loaded into the data model, but I don't want the data itself to present on the worksheet. And then I have listed like certain transformations to make for each of the three files. So the dividend data, if we just open it up and take a quick look at it, bear with me here while it opens. And of course, it opened on a different screen. So we have like a date, the action type, and the amount of the dividend, and it dates back to 1990. So they pay a quarterly dividend to their shareholders, so 4 times per year. What this is asking us to do is to not load it as the quarterly dividend, but instead load it or transform it such that it shows the annual amount. Similarly, there are no transformations, I guess, required for the earnings per share file, but there are transformations that for the price history that is asking us to show the average price in December of each year. So let's go through and add these three files into this blank workbook. I haven't saved it yet. The only thing in here are these instructions. We'll add them one at a time and then create a relationship within the data model between those three tables. To add the files, I'm going to go to data, get data, and these I believe are Excel workbooks. I think, hold on, are they CSV files? I can't remember. No, it's a workbook, which would influence how I go about doing this. So they're from an Excel workbook. So data on the ribbon, get data from a file and from an Excel workbook. And from here, I'm going to navigate into my downloads folder. Just bear with me while it actually opens up the Power Query interface. And of course, not responding as soon as I start recording this video. Bear with me, please. Okay, so here we go, downloads. And here are those three files here. So let's just do the earnings per share one. It's listed at the top. For me, this one, there were no transformations that were needed. So I'm going to click on import. So this will be the easiest one for us. I'm going to click on import. Okay, so here we have the workbook. It basically treats the entire file as a folder, and then the different worksheets that exist within that folder are different files. So here I have L-CA, so L for Loblaw, and then dash for Canada. So it's publicly traded in Canada. And then we have their earnings per share. It looks like this is annual earnings per share as of December 31st of each year. There are no transformations that are needed. However, what I'm going to do is click on transform anyway. The reason I'm going to is if I do not do that, the query name will become L-CA, and that is really not very descriptive. This data is earnings per share data, EPS data. So I'm going to just name the query EPS. So click on transform, and my Power Query editor will open. And I'll rename it on the right-hand side of this. By just typing over what the worksheet name was with what I want it to be, EPS. And from here, I'm going to click on close and load to. And I don't want to load this to the worksheet as a table. If I click on table, it would load somewhere on this worksheet, wherever I specify, or a new worksheet, I guess. However, I don't want that. It said create a connection only, but add it to the data model. So it will exist within this workbook, but not on any worksheet. Instead, it will reside within the data model. So I click on OK. So that one is done. That was by far our easiest one. Let's move on with what was next. It's now this dividend data, but we need to transform it such that it shows the annual dividend. So I'm going to get the data, or get data, from the data tab on the ribbon, from a file, from an Excel workbook, and we're going to go through those same procedures. Here, I'll select the dividend workbook and click on import. And here, again, it has the same name as the other spreadsheet did, L-CA. This is referring to the ticker or the symbol associated with Loblaw. It's not a very descriptive name. So that's one thing we're going to change. But also what we need to do is to transform the data such that it's showing us the annual amount of the dividend and not the quarterly amount. So I'm going to click on this transform data button. Typically, my computer is not this slow. I'm a little bit surprised. My apologies about this. So this is going to contain, or this does contain dividend data. So I'm going to rename the query to dividend. Dividends over here. And we have our two queries now. The first one, EPS, is what we already did. So if we wanted to modify that query, I could click on it or just look at it. But this one's good. The EPS one is fine. And now we have this dividend one. This dividend one we are going to be changing. What I want to do here is a couple of quick things. One, I want to make sure that I'm being mindful of the data types. For each column, you can see the data type by the icon in the top left. So for the date, it has this calendar here to indicate this is a date. Next to action type, you can see ABC. This is a string or text. And then the amount, 1.2, this refers to a decimal number. So just to confirm here, you have the data type listed here. So you want numeric values to be treated as a number, otherwise it will limit the calculations that are possible. But ultimately, what I need to do, if I want to summarize this by year, I need to do essentially the equivalent of a sum if, but isolate all of the years that are given in the data. The way to do that is actually by adding a helper column here. So I'm going to select this date column, click on add column, go to date, and then I'm going to say year and basically click on year. What this will do is add a new column to this data that will give me the year associated with each date. So for example, there are 4 values for 1990 because all of these dates exist in 1990. They pay a quarterly dividend 4 times per year, 4 dividend payments per year. So there's 4 values for 1990. Now what I would like to do is to basically do the equivalent of the sum if function, meaning I want to add these 4 values together to get the total annual amount for 1990. And do that for every single year, not just 1990, but for all of them. The way to do that is I need to group together the year column. I want to collapse what is 4 observations per year into 1 observation and then sum together the adjacent column, the amount. So here, to do that, I'm going to click on year, go to transform at the top, and go to this group by top left button. I do want to group by the year column, and I'm going to create a new column name when I do it. It's going to be the annual dividend. And what the values I want in this new column are going to be to sum together the amount column. So if I'm collapsing the year such that there is one unique value now, one row per year, I want to collapse the amount column such that it adds all of the ones that share the same year together. So I'm going to sum together the amount column, and that will give me the annual dividend. So I click OK. So now I have two columns, year and the annual dividend. And what I'm going to do now is add this into the data model. So close and load to. Only create a connection, add it to the data model, and click OK. All right, one more. So price history. So this is going to be the stock price for Loblaw of each year. I want to transform it such that it shows me the average price in December of each year. So get data from a file, from an Excel workbook, price history, import. I want this price history one, but you can tell right away in the preview, there's a couple of problems associated with this. Ultimately, what I want is the date and the price to be the column headers. Right now, just the underlying data is such that the way it came from wherever it came from included like other values above the actual data. So I'm going to get rid of the rows of this data that I don't need and then treat the date and the price as the column headers. So I'm going to click on transform. In this case, I'm okay with the name price history. This is Loblaw stock price. But notice how the first row is blank here. It's not like an Excel spreadsheet where I can just right click and delete the row. Instead, I want to remove this top row. It's not part of the data, just the underlying data came blank. So I'm going to click on remove top rows. And then I can specify here how many of the top rows that I don't want included in the data. Price history in column 2 are the column headers. They're not treated as data points. Instead, row 1 is the row 1 you see here. I want to remove that first row. So I'll just select 1. If there was like 4 or 5 blank rows at the top, I would do 4 or 5. But here there's only one row that's blank. So I'm going to click on or type 1 and then click on OK. So that will get rid of the blank row at the top. Now what I need or want is I want date and price to be the column header. I want those to be the labels for the values that exist in the column. Right now, the label for this column is price history : L-CA, but these are obviously date values. So I want these to be dates. You can see at the top left, it says ABC 123, meaning that there are both numeric values and number values in this column. So that's a problem. These are actually date values. So I want it to be recognized as a date. And same thing over here. It says ABC 123 because there's a string in row 1 and then numeric values beneath it. But really, these should all be numeric values because it contains stock price. So what I need to do is basically put row 1 as the column. The way to do that is this transform group on the home tab. It says use first row as headers. That is what I want to do. That will put the date as the column header, which is a more appropriate label for the values that exist there. Now, all of a sudden, Excel was smart enough to recognize that these are date values, and I have the calendar icon, and the data type is a date. That will allow us to work with this data a little bit better. Similarly, the price, it's a 1.2, which is a decimal number. I can see that the data type is a decimal number. That will allow us to work with this data a little bit better. However, what I need to do is to transform this in a way that will allow us to calculate the average stock price in December of each year. So there are some modifications I need to make to this data. What I'm going to do here is a couple of things. I could go about this in more than one way, and I should have approached this video with a concrete way in which I wanted to tackle it. But that's okay. I'm going to click on this date column, and I'm going to add a couple of helper columns. What I'm going to do here is based on month, what I'll do is, you know what, just give me like the name of the month here. So now I've added a column, this helper column called month name, and I'll filter it such that it shows me only December values. So remove everything else. So I filtered everything out except for December. Now what I'm going to do is actually add in another helper column. So I'm going to go back to date, add a column, or sorry, select the date column and go to add column, date, and I'll say end of year or just year. And what I've done is I've extracted the year from the date field as a new column. Because I filtered out every other month, if I were to average based on year now, the result would be the average of December because there's only December values that exist within this data. So what I'm going to do is select the year column, go to my home, or sorry, transform tab, and say group by. And I'm going to group by the year. I'm going to create a new column name called average stock price, and this is going to be December's average. And I'm going to average together the row or the stock price column. So I have like probably about 20 to 25 observations per month here. When I reduce the number of rows from however many there are per year, should be about 20 or 25. I can see that there's 20 in December of 2006, or sorry 2005. And I'm getting that because it's row 20, December 30th, 2005. So there's 20 observations in 2005. I want to collapse those 20 into one row. When I do it, I want to average together the price values column. So I'm going to click on OK. So I'm left with two columns, year and the average stock price in December. And I'm going to close and load this to the data model. Create a connection, add it to the data model, click OK. All right, so I have my three queries here. The next thing it asks me to do is define a relationship between those three tables in the data model. So let's do that. So I have this Power Pivot tab on my ribbon available for me, and I can click on Manage the Data Model. If this is not there for you, you need to enable it. A kind of a shortcut way to do that is by going to the Data tab on the ribbon, and there's this Data Model button here. And I can click on Manage Data Model, and if you don't already have Power Pivot enabled, it will prompt you to do that at this point. However, I already have it made or enabled. So this opens up the data model. And by default, it's showing me the data view. So it's showing me the three tables that we imported. We have the earnings per share, dividends, and price history. And I want it to define a relationship between these three tables so that they can communicate with each other. Effectively treat them as a lookup table, which will allow us to pull information between the three different tables. The easiest way to do that is by going into the diagram view. What I'm going to do, you can position these however you want, but you can quite clearly see there are three or one field that is common amongst all three tables, and that's the year. In the dividends table, it's called the year. In the price histories table, it's called the year. In the earnings per share, it's called date. But if I go and take a look at the data in the earnings per share table, it's actually not. So that is going to be a problem that we're going to have to address. I won't be able to create a relationship based on this because it won't be able to find a match because I have a date value here, but these other two tables, I actually have a year and a year, a 4-digit number. So I'm going to actually modify my query for, what was it, earnings per share, just to add in a year column. So I'm going to select this date column, go to add column, date, year, and year. All right, so I've got year as a column here now. And then I'll just close and load it back to the data model. All right, there we go. So going back into the data model, I'm going to go and look at this in the diagram view. I now have this year column that exists here, and I have this year column that exists here, and this year column that exists here. What I'm going to do is try to connect these just by clicking, dragging, and dropping. In fact, I'm actually going to delete that. And go the other way. Year over year, between price history and dividend, and year over year between price history and earnings per share. Now I don't need to save this in any way. There is the save button here. If you're worried about it, you could click on that. That will save the whole workbook. I'm sorry. Oh, I haven't even saved the workbook yet, so I won't do that now. I'm just going to X out. That relationship is saved automatically. So now it asks me to create a pivot table showing earnings per share and stock price by year. So let's do that. I'm going to click on Insert, and there's this pivot table button, but the data resides in the data model. So I'm going to click this down arrow, and I want to create a pivot table from the data model. I'm going to put it somewhere that exists. I'll put it down here in cell B14, click OK. So this is going to show me earnings per share and stock price by year. So I'll call this EPS and stock price. And I have all three of those tables that I added into my data model here as an available pivot table field. So what I can do, what is it? I need earnings per share and stock price by year. So I have my year I'll take from my earnings per share table, and I'll put earnings per share as an actual value. Now what I'll do is go into my price history and take my average stock price. So I have it as a field here. Now, this is a little bit of a nuance associated with this. I did define a relationship, but obviously the stock price is not the same every year, nor is it 1,240. What this is actually doing is summing together all of the stock prices that exist, and this has to do with the way the relationship was defined in the data model. So there's two ways I can go about fixing this. One is reversing the direction of the relationship in the data model, or two, what I'm going to do is take year off of this. So right now I have year coming from my earnings per share table. So maybe I'll just deselect that. I'm going to put year in here from price history. And now this looks a little bit better. So there's one year that exists here where there's no specific match, but that's okay. So I've gotten my earnings per share and my stock price on the same table. What I'm going to do is just filter out that one where there was no match, and I have it. All right, so let's clean this pivot table up a little bit. Add a field that shows the percentage growth from the base year. Okay, so I have the fields I want. I have the actual earnings per share amount from 2005, and I have the actual average stock price in December from 2005. These are the December averages. But there's two things that I'd like to do. Well, more than two. I'm going to just apply a better style. I'll Also, the grand total doesn't make any sense for this specific data. So I'm going to get rid of the grand totals. And actually, while we're here, notice that grand total was what was repeating before. It was summing together all of the years. I'm going to turn them off and give these a custom field name. I'll do outline form. And I don't want sum of earnings per share. I just want like EPS and average stock price December. So I'll just show those. But what this is asking for is a field that shows the percentage growth from the base year. So overall, like what is the cumulative percent of 6.99 greater than 2.71 for earnings per share? The way to add that is I'm going to take this earnings per share field. It's already here in the values area of my table. I'm just going to drag that in there twice so that it repeats. I have the one that it was originally there, and then I have this one. And I want this to be the percentage growth from using 2005 as a base. So to do that, I'm going to go to my sum of EPS into my value field settings. And I'm going to show the value as a percentage difference from. And my base is going to be 2005. If I wanted the year over year growth, I would say previous, but I want 2005 as my base, and I'm going to click on OK. So here, this will be EPS percent since 2005. So collectively, like cumulatively, since 2005, it's grown by 157%. And I'm going to repeat that procedure for stock price. So I'm going to take stock price. It's already in the pivot table. And just add it there again. Go into my value field settings and show the value as a percent difference from 2005 as my base. And here I'll say percent change stock 2005, just to know that this is the cumulative percent change since 2005. So 315% it's grown by since 2005. So that's the first thing here. Create a pivot table, and then that one. All right, the next thing is to create a pivot chart that plots stock price and EPS. So to do that, what I'll do is click on Insert, Pivot Chart. Okay. So right now, my fields list doesn't show up. I just select my pivot chart, click on Pivot Chart, Analyze, Fields List, and I have the same fields that I would have had for my pivot table. So I need stock price and EPS here. So I'm going to go to price, year, my average stock price, that's what I want, and then I'm going to plot EPS as well. Right now, this pivot chart is not really very good for a couple of reasons. One is that like the scales are just totally different. Like you can see here, actually with the actual data, I have $2, but $56. So like they're totally different scales, which doesn't allow us to see trends very well. And then second, I don't really like this as a bar chart. I want to see this as a line chart. So what I'm going to do is change the chart type right away. So with the pivot chart selected, I'm going to say go to design and then change chart type. And I'm going to do this as a line chart. So that's one thing, edit that will allow us to look at this a little bit better. But I want to scale it appropriately. So this second line, like it looks like earnings per share is like basically horizontal, but it's just because it's on a different scale as our stock price. So I'm going to just right click on it and say format data series and then plot it on the secondary axis. So this allows us to look at trends and movement in stock price and earnings per share at the same time. Now, a couple of quick things, and I only have actually 1 minute before this recording will automatically shut off. So I'm going to add a title really quick, and I'm going to get rid of sum of EPS and sum of stock price. So I do that by going into the value field settings, and I'll just say stock price December and EPS diluted. My chart title, this is Loblaw stock price and EPS. And these value field buttons, I don't need, they take up space. so I'll just get rid of them.